TSN studios located in the mountain region of western North Carolina. You are listening to the Ourlads Football Radio Network.
It's Thursday, the 31st of August, 2017. I'm your host, Craig DePalma, and after kicking off the OFN yesterday with a great show that included guests like Dan Shonka of Ourlads.com, ProFootballFocus.com founder Neil Hornsby, and Evan Tex Western, the managing editor for AcmePackingCompany.com, talking Packers football. We have another good show for you today. We're going to preview the 2017 NFL season. And the person who's going to be with me every Thursday, the person I'm going to introduce, who's going to be my co-host all through the season to provide the best NFL coverage around. And we're both stoked to be joining forces again after breaking up several years ago. Yes, I was heartbroken, but I never lost faith for a reunion. My co-host is an independent sports columnist and exclusive handicapper at VegasInsider.com. I welcome back to my airwaves, Tony Mejia. Tony, how's it going?
Going well, heartwarming there, but
what can I
everything's
say?
going really well. That's good. Breaking up's hard to do.
Yeah, well, reunions are better. Okay,
Yeah, right.
So by the way, a little bit later on in the show, just want to let everybody know too, when the preview's over in about an hour from now, Matthew Stevens, the managing editor for BaltimoreBeatdown.com, will be my guest to preview the season for the Baltimore Ravens. We had a scheduling change. Jeff Hartman, editor for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, will join me tomorrow starting at 3:15, along with Ken Marangolo, the managing editor of HogsHaven.com, as we'll preview both the Steelers and the Redskins. And that'll be at 3:15 tomorrow. 2 o'clock tomorrow, by the way, is Fantasy Football Talk with Ourlads.com chief fantasy analyst Jamal Murphy. So that's what's coming up tomorrow and a little bit later on. And as I always like to do with special, I know we're not new. We just put that in there, but it's been a while. So just to remind everybody, when we were doing shows years ago, at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were working with CBS Sportsline, and I know we talked a lot of football, but you were also heavily involved with the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I was CBS. I think it was post CBS. I think I was doing pro basketball news at that point. But yeah, I was the national NBA writer for CBS last decade, probably middle of last decade, for about 5 years, and I did CBN. And my strength is the NBA draft, is the extensive college basketball work I do. But yeah, I covered the league and traveled to finals, and did all that. And that is actually my passion more than football. But hey, football is got to kill time between September and
yeah.
Well, now the NBA season starts a little earlier, but still, I'm under no illusions that football isn't king, both college and pro, and here we are upon it.
Yeah, and of course, your work with Vegas Insider. So you've been doing a lot of handicapping now since because right around the time I remember you were just getting involved with it, which is the reason that we split up. You had a lot of work ahead of you. Your life was changing as well as your family. Your family's growing. I don't even know how many kids you have now, like 8, 9.
No, just 3 girls.
Just three girls. Don't have a boy yet.
The end of my existence in about 10 to 12 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Limited lifespan.
All right. I'll remember that in case we're on the air for another decade. I'll know the timer's running out at that point. Okay. Sure. So anyway, yeah. So you've been to Vegas and you've been all over, and you've been doing professional handicapping contests. So how's the experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a marathon. There's no question. This will be my 3rd or 4th year in the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, which is the premier handicapping football contest in the country. And I think this year it already has record numbers, and BSIN, the Brent Musburger Network, was doing a live simulcast from there this year, and a little bit of a change up from what they've done in past years, where it's basically been a seminar. But yeah, they're very excited about it. First winner's that's going to be a millionaire once that contest ends, and it's always competitive. I think they out the top 50, and last year I went into the final week with a chance at getting in that top 50. Needed a 4 out of 5 and completely choked and got a 2 out of 5. So,
Oh,
that was the break. But yeah, and I'm in the college contest too for William Hill this year. Just dipping my toe in that, and certainly at this point we're not to get too deep into the legislature and whatnot, but we are headed in the direction where we're covering gambling and the first segment of the Sports Center and what the spread is and how the line moves, and it's inevitable that that's where we're headed.
Absolutely. And of course, it doesn't hurt to have a hockey team and a football team in Vegas. So,
no doubt. You should see the airport, man. It was completely different this time around. I mean, with the Golden Knights logo, which looks so much similar to my UCF, my alma mater UCF logo, and then now you see Raiders stuff everywhere, which is a completely different change from 12 months ago. You can hop onto the airport and all of a sudden Raiders logo greets you everywhere.
That's cool. Looking forward to it. All right. By the way, a little bit later on, if we have some time, we'll talk. We'll get insight on your 4 teams that you have in the playoff college football. We're also we'll go division by division, starting with the NFC West. I'm going to get your take on that. And also, by the way, before we get started, just so I probably should say this every couple of shows, because I do live in Western Carolina in the mountains, as you heard in the open, and I've never lived in an area where I have experienced more power outages in my entire life. I mean, there's the transformer in my neighborhood goes out once a month. I'm not exaggerating. So, and just before we came on the air, my light in my room started flickering, and I was about to panic. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And when it goes out, it's out for like 5 hours. So I must warn everybody that in case you ever hear this show drop out, and that's the only thing you got to deal with being on the internet. We're all on the internet nowadays, but there's nothing anybody can do about electricity. I know there is something out there somebody did tell me about that I have to look up, that there's some sort of like some sort of a generator device you can use for your computer. So if electricity gets shut down, you can actually tap into your computer with this piece of, I don't know what it is. I have to find out about it, but if that's actually out there, I have to get it. Okay, so let's get right into it, Tony. And by the way, you're also will be promoting your NFL Essentials piece that'll be coming out during the season at VegasInsider.com. When will that be out every week?
Monday, Tuesday. Okay. And then there's a college version as well, which highlights the week's top 12 games. It's called The Dozen. So okay. That'll be out on Mondays, and I think the NFL Essentials will be out on Tuesday. Basically, your breakdown of what you need to be on high alert for going into games, be it injury situations or matchups that coordinators are going to try to exploit.
Awesome. Okay, let's get right into it. Let's start in the NFC West, and everybody's assuming, and I don't think this is a crazy surprise, it'll be down to Seattle and Arizona. I do believe, though, that this division is going to be much tougher than last season because Arizona should be better. You can't expect Carson Palmer to be worse, but then again, you never know. He is getting older. You've got a Ram team that should be better. I already like what I see out of Goff in the preseason compared to last season. He's got McVay as a coach. He knows what he's doing. I think Shanahan knows what he's doing. I like what I see out of Hoyer in the preseason. So I think with Seattle and Arizona, especially when Seattle has to play teams like the Rams in San Francisco, and they were cakewalks the last year or two, I don't think they're going to be cakewalks anymore. It doesn't mean they're not going to beat them, but those teams are going to, especially with that weak offensive line Seattle has, which might be the worst in football, that maybe those teams could actually put up a little bit better of an effort. Not that they haven't in the past, but even more so. Maybe they could actually win a game or two that they're not supposed to in this division. So, but Seattle, Arizona, is it going to be Seattle, or do you think Arizona might make a comeback after a down year?
I mean, I do think it hinges on Palmer and his consistency. When he's on, he can move the chains, and obviously he's got one of the best running backs in football behind him, a versatile guy that, even if he's having a bad day, can carry the load on short screens and dump passes. So he doesn't have to be perfect, but he does have to stay healthy. One, don't trust the back situation regardless of how.
Yeah. That's true.
Yes, it's what's funny is it is one of the better ones in the league. But when the Seahawks are your main competition, you got to have the ones out there. Absolutely right about the Seattle's offensive line. We'll see with Western Kentucky's George Fant, who I knew was one of the better rebounders in the country, going down. That is troubling, especially since he did grow by leaps and bounds in terms of being thrown out there so raw, and he was a big part of their plans this year. So now they've got a huge question mark there at tackle. But I do like the fact that their secondary and returning intact, and they can control games in that manner.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen at running back as well. They are deeper at running back this year.
They love Chris Carson, though.
Yeah, Chris Carson sure looked good in the preseason. So, and I'm sure you watched him a lot last year at Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
So, and look, I'm not a big Lacey fan, never was. And Rawls, you know what? Rawls stays healthy, I think they'll be fine. But if Rawls is not healthy, I think they're not going to run as effectively as they could. But Rawls, I don't know if he can stay healthy. That's also an issue. So there are issues there, and maybe even Paul Richardson can from the very beginning of the year, which didn't happen, and he's another guy that has to stay healthy, can give Russell Wilson more weapons than he's ever had, and he has admitted that. But again, Arizona, you tell me, does Arizona have a legitimate chance, or are you picking them to win the division? Who are you taking?
I'll stick with Seattle, but yeah, I'm big on the Arizona bandwagon. That's a playoff team to me, and I think Peterson is one of those players that can dramatically change a game. They're going to be solid in the secondary. They've got themselves a no-fly zone as well. So defensively, I like what I see. Again, if Palmer stays healthy, it's a 10-11 win team, and they'll be right there with the Seahawks. And I think if you probably because of the discrepancy between the Rams and 49ers and these two, clearly the win totals are skewed to where it's hard to really back an over on them without much room for error. I think Seattle's is a 10.5.
Okay.
And Arizona's is around I'll give you it's actually only 8.5. So
wow.
Yeah, I would definitely like the over on Arizona, and just to take a crack. And the most recent odds have Arizona 3-1 to win the division, where Seattle's at 2-7 favorite.
Wow.
So, clearly the Westgate really likes the Seahawks as their chalk.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at Super Bowl futures, I'll tell you right now, because I'm with you. I think Arizona could definitely, based on injuries, which happen every year. That's why it's so hard when you're trying to compare a couple of teams that are pretty close to each other. A lot of the time, it's coming down to injuries. And sure, play or two during the season, but injuries come into play. And when we're talking about Arizona, will John Brown stay healthy? Boy, he looked good in the preseason, but can he stay healthy? If he stays healthy, that's something that Carson Palmer also missed last year. So we can blame a lot of stuff on Carson Palmer last year, but he didn't have anybody to throw to. So that was a major issue. Floyd was a bust. He stole a Super Bowl ring with the Patriots. And then you take a look at Robert Candice. Can he step up? Because they need him to step up on the defensive line. And so far, he's looked pretty good. So, but the big difference is Seattle's 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. Arizona's 33-1. I'll tell you right now. You tell me if I have to pick one of those two teams, I take Arizona, because I think it's that close.
Absolutely, I would agree with you on that. And I'm not a huge futures guy. I'll take a stab at a win total here and there. But everything with the NFL does hinge on injuries, and I prefer to be a week-to-week handicapper and take advantage of situations that expose themselves, as opposed to throwing a big knife and hoping that stab in the dark pans out 12 weeks from now. That we're you're really trying to look into the future.
Okay, well that's good. So I like the future game, and you like the week-to-week game, so that's why we make a good team. Let's go now to the NFC South, and boy, I got to tell you right now, I think anything from 1 to 4 even can happen here. I actually like what I've seen from New Orleans defense in the preseason. Dennis Allen's been there a second year. I like some of the additions that they brought in. I don't think, I know people may think that maybe there's some issues in the passing game. But Ted Ginn I don't even know what he's going to do. Don't even care. Michael Thomas is going to have a huge year. If they could just get Brandon Coleman to take the preseason and the regular season, that would be major for them. And then they got the three-headed monster in the running game, which I still believe Ingram is going to carry the ball, is going to be the number one guy. I don't think it's going to be Peterson. And that's fine because Ingram did a good job last year when he didn't have to have the heavy burden, and that's why they brought in Peterson, so he didn't have to have that burden. So I think the offense is going to be fine, and I think the defense is going to be better, but this is also a defense that needs to stay healthy. So New Orleans, I think, can definitely make the wild card because I just don't know. I'm not a Dirk Cutter fan, and I don't trust Carolina right now with Cam Newton. I just don't know what's going on there. But with Atlanta, the thing with Atlanta is that there's so much talent on that team that I think that if they have if something bad happens to them this year, I don't think it's going to be one of those Super Bowl hangovers where they go 7-9 like Carolina or 6-10. I think it's going to be more of a Buffalo Bills situation where they go back to the Super Bowl and lose again. So I think they're that talented. I don't think that this team can be caught in this division, but I do think the other three teams, any of them, can get to the wild card.
Yeah, as boring as it sounds, I agree with you. And we have the Cardinals just lost the Super Bowl in ridiculously heartbreaking fashion. So no, they're not going to come in sleepwalking like the Panthers. And they are so talented to where you can lose a Julio Jones off the team and still that's a 10-win team. And obviously with them it's a 12, 13, 14-win team. So we'll see about the Buccaneers. I do think that with Mike Evans emerging as a top 5 number one, and Jameis, if he can limit turnovers, because they're crippling with the I don't know if you've seen Hard Knocks this season,
no.
But it does seem, and I mean they make no secret about it, that if Jameis is a team, we're lost without Jameis. I think that's even been mentioned on the show. Without him, we're nothing. With him, it is a wild situation considering he's still so young and error prone. But at the same time, you see that his leadership permeates, and those guys do follow him. And to me, that's a wild card team if everything goes right, because you put a situation where Deshaun Jackson comes in and takes some pressure off Evans, Cam Brate at tight end, obviously Doug Martin if he stays healthy, a playmaker. So it's an offense that has so many weapons, and the defense isn't bad. So. To me, I think they're the 2 in that division. Carolina's a 3 simply because of Cam not being able to trust him, not knowing whether he'll be able to stay healthy given the hits that he takes, and the fact that he already comes into the season behind the 8 ball. And then the Saints are a very solid team, but I just don't know. Do you trust the defense based on what we've seen so far in the preseason? Is great,
sure,
but it is the preseason for a reason.
Sure.
And then Drew Brees doesn't need a number one. I'm with that, but he does need 2 of those guys to step up considerably, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and who's that going to be? Is it going to be Coleman? Because Fleener really hasn't been that guy that they were hoping he would be. But maybe that's also why they went after Peterson. Maybe they're going to have a little bit more concerted effort in trying to run the ball just a little bit more. We'll find out whether that's the truth or not.
It needs the new Cooks. I mean, is that presumably how he's going to be used? Can he be effective in that role? I mean, and when you have other options in that division, that to me is why it's tough to get behind even a Drew Brees list.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the growth of Chris Godwin with Tampa Bay, especially with just Deshaun Jackson's being banged up a little in the preseason. He's getting a little older. You never know. So I think Godwin with O.J. Howard, and also, Vernon Hargraves looks really good in the preseason, and that's a guy that, and now after being a rookie last year, looks like he might be living up to his draft status as a future shutdown corner, which would be huge for them. Okay, let's go to the North. And we know the Packers are going to win this division, so there's nothing to debate there unless you've got a surprise for me. So I guess the question is Minnesota-Detroit. Now, Minnesota's 28 to win the Super Bowl. Detroit 66 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. So a lot of people believe there's a big, or at least Vegas believes there's a huge difference between Minnesota and Detroit. And I would favor Minnesota only because I get the main thing is I think they got a better coaching staff. And I think those 2 teams are very similar. We know Stafford's a better quarterback, and sometimes that helps. But Minnesota's got a better defense, a better coaching staff, and because they're so close, Bradford's not that bad. So I'd lean towards Minnesota as the second team. I'm not sure I put them in the playoffs, though.
Yeah, I think they're both right there as far as in the 5-6 spot as a playoff team. I agree with the Packers being the class of this division. And to me, for Minnesota, they're going to be relying on Dalvin Cook to be
Yeah.
special out of the gate. It's very, very simple with that, especially when you're going to commit to your defense being the bell cow of the entire unit, and then Sam Bradford not to make mistakes, but at the same time basically becoming Alex Smith. So, that's where we're at with that. And everybody on the defense has to stay healthy. It's definitely formidable. It's definitely well run. I do think Detroit can continue to be the contender that they've been over the last couple of seasons. Again, so long as they stay healthy. Ziggy Ansah is a question mark entering week one, entering the season. If they can get him healthy, he's one of the better, pass rushers, game changers in the league potentially.
Yeah, poor Matthew Stafford. I mean, you would think that at some point he'd get lucky with a really smart head coach, somebody that could just go in there and steal 2 wins a season, that kind of thing. But yeah, you know what? He got the big contract. He deserves it. And in this day and age, he could still play effectively maybe for another 6 or 7 years if he stays healthy. Okay.
Well, they got a defensive coordinator, at least they've been able to hang on to Austin probably a year longer than we thought they would. Again, big year for them because ideally they make the playoffs, and we'll see if there's harmony too within that team. Anytime somebody gets a ridiculous contract extension, that's all you've been hearing about in Detroit these last 48 hours. It'll be interesting to see how they come into the season, if they come in confident or if they come off pointing fingers if things go badly early.
And by the way, I do like their top 3 picks in the draft. The Florida kids, Davis and Tabor, and Kenny Golladay. Boy, they needed a receiver with size, especially with Bolden gone. Now they got a younger receiver with size. That's going to be a kid that maybe not probably this year because he's a rookie. But watch out for him in the next 2 or 3 years. He might become Matthew Stafford's favorite target. Okay, so if you had a pick,
yeah, I agree. To me, he's the. I can't think of a better rookie receiver this year. I really can't.
There you go. That's. I'm glad you concurred. Okay, so if you had to take Detroit or Minnesota right now, who would you take second?
Minnesota.
Okay. Let's go to the East. And, boy, this is another division that can go any of these 4 teams. Can go 1, 2, 3, 4. Any of them. So, again, injuries, all that kind of stuff, schedules is going to come into play. I'm starting to sour on Washington. You start losing so many coordinators and so many key guys on staff, especially on offense with Kirk Cousins, and then you lose the receivers. I'd like to see Perrine start getting the number 1 carry soon, and maybe he will. I do like their defense better than last year. They got the steal of the draft with Allen slipping to them. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time thinking that this is their year, and especially the way that they choked it away last year. And then Dallas with the Ezekiel Elliott nonsense, it's another issue. So if you take a look at that, I'm looking at the Eagles after that. So many close losses last year. I love taking teams that are growing, that have young coaches, young quarterbacks, and go through a season that they went through where they had a lot of excruciatingly close losses. That tells me that when they're older and wiser, more experienced, that they will win those games. So, and I love the new receivers Wentz has. I think Blunt is a good fit for them. So I think the defense is real solid, and they get Lane Johnson all year. So I like the Eagles, and look, I know the Giants' offensive line is an issue, but you know what? Okay, unless I haven't seen Eli Manning get sacked 50 times before, and if he has, I don't even remember when it was. Maybe it was 6 years ago. I don't think they're that bad. Maybe they don't open holes for Perkins to rush for 1,200 yards, but as long as he can rush, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 yards a game, and provide some sort of balance. Eli's got so many weapons now. I love Evan Ingram. I think he's going to have a huge season for the Giants. As again, keeping Beckham healthy, keeping Marshall healthy. But I think offensively, we know what they can do on defense now. So I think it's a 2-dog race. I'm going to go with the Eagles and the Giants.
Well, I mean, that's the difference is the Giants' defense. You have to respect them because offensively, they have all the toys, but we've seen time and time again over the last couple of years, Eli Manning throw the ball to the other team more than he should.
Yeah, that's true.
It is ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
And so, that to me is the big variable there. I mean, whether they can run the ball or not and get in from the 2, which they've had issues with as well. I think the play calling has been nonsense. But that is a team where you take them and you watch their tapes and whatnot. and they stand out as a Super Bowl contender. Just as the high ceiling wise, they've got all the tools.
Yep.
Philadelphia, I think, is a little more inconsistent. You wonder about their ability to cover. There's no question that I think that secondary has issues, and we'll see if Darby can be a massive upgrade. He's going to take a few weeks, and they've obviously got to get him up to speed.
True.
But Carson Wentz inconsistent. Dak Prescott potentially inconsistent. Kirk Cousins obviously, and Manning. So I think whoever able to play consistent football without turning the ball over in this division. I discount Washington, but out of those first three, I think is ultimately going to take the division. And I would say Dak Prescott's going to take a massive step back if not for that offensive line, because they masked so many issues, and I wasn't that high on him coming into the league, and obviously he proved me wrong. But again, you got to do it in year two.
All right. So who would you put up the top if you had to just flip a coin?
Sadly, the Giants, because
Okay.
I would never back that at all. But
No,
I think they're the most talented team in the division if everything goes right.
Yeah, again, it's anybody of these teams can do it, and the Giants are the second choice as far as they're right there with Dallas. Dallas 12-1 to win the Super Bowl. Giants 14-1. Big drop off. Eagles at 40-1, and then the Redskins at 66-1. Okay, let's go to the AFC West now. And you know what? I look at this division like I do the NFC South in a way. Not necessarily that they have an Atlanta in there. But also not necessarily because when I look there, I mean, when I look at the similarities, it's that I kind of put the Chargers where I talked about the Saints. You got Drew Brees, you got Phillip Rivers. And Rivers hasn't been into the postseason in a few years, and I think this is his best opportunity to get there. I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but, I mean, when you got Ingram and Bosa now, those are probably – it might be the best tandem for a 3-4 defense, and it's 4-3-3-4. They're going to play a lot of crazy different variables, obviously. But I like the depth that they have at linebacker. I like those two guys. How can you not? Those are two great guys to work with. And then you take a look offensively. The offensive line is still an issue, but it should be a little bit better. I know Lamp is out, but it still should be a little bit better, bringing in Okung. And then the receivers, Allen's got to stay healthy. And if Allen stays healthy, he's healthy now. I think Benjamin's looking a lot better. And that was a weapon that Rivers only had a little bit last year. Didn't have the timing right. I think the timing will be better. Now you move Ty Williams into like a number 3 role. And then you still don't know what's going to become of Mike Williams, but I'm not even going to put him into the mix. I don't think that's even necessary. And then you got Melvin Gordon. So I think the Chargers, and you know what? I know they're in the stadium crazy issue, but sometimes you go into those little tiny stadiums and it'll be sold out, because how can you not sell out 30,000 people? And maybe you'll have a home field advantage that they never had in the first place. So I actually think the Chargers would be a little bit better. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually made it in the wild card, but I'm going to go ahead and take Oakland as the top team. And of course, Kansas City, if the Chargers don't make a move to finish second.
I'm with you on San Diego looking a lot better. You have faith in Phillip Rivers. He comes out first drive of the preseason, hooks up with Antonio Gates like it's 2004.
Yeah, right.
But it is in terms of what we're seeing from them, a team that's going to be better on both sides of the ball. Are the Broncos going to be, unless there's an injury, I don't buy it. But if that defense somehow loses a key guy loses it to lead, that's the last place team in this division.
I agree.
And then Kansas City and Oakland are the class of it. Both potential to be elite, but I definitely side with Oakland as well. Because of the ceiling Alex Smith provides.
Yeah, with Kansas City, how many years does it take the Chiefs to figure out that it would really? And I'm not even counting Tyreek Hill, but can they get a number 1 receiver in there? I mean, Alex Smith has like nobody to throw the ball to except for Travis Kelce. And then, okay, now you got Tyreek Hill, even though he's like dropped 10 passes in the preseason. So who knows what kind of a second year he's going to have. And I don't care that they lost Ware. I actually think it's better for them because I like Hunt anyway. But yeah, with them, we know the defense is going to be solid. They have a really good home field advantage. Smith is one of those game managers, very elite game manager. But yeah, Oakland a little bit more dynamic. Question is with Oakland is can they play enough defense? That's what Kansas City has the edge over them. But Kansas City doesn't have the explosion on offense like Oakland does.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the Raiders should be better defensively this year. You get another year where Khalil Mack gets to feel his oats in that defense and become more of a leader. And again, that the fact that you have so much firepower in your back pocket offensively is going to give them some room for error. I mean, you saw Derek Carr time after time with the comebacks last year. That's a team that's going to develop a swagger early on if they get going, get the ball rolling.
I mean, now Derek Carr, it was good last year, and now he's got Cordarrelle Patterson and Marshawn Lynch to work with. That's pretty good.
I think Patterson really is potentially somebody we talk about every single week, just making one dynamic play after another.
Yeah, and of course, he'll probably return at least one kickoff for a touchdown. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
So who you like in the division? Oakland or Kansas City?
Yeah, I'll go with the Raiders.
Okay. Let's. By the way, Oakland is the favorite to win the Super Bowl in that division at 14-1. Chiefs 22, Denver 25. Chargers 66. Let's go to the South. And now this one, I think most people are going with Houston over Tennessee. I'll throw a little tiny monkey in the wrench. This will be my one, well, probably my second surprise, even though I did take the Eagles at 40-1, but I don't think the Eagles are a surprise to win the NFC East. I'm going to go ahead and take the Colts here. And I'm going to take the Colts here because, now look, yes, it's all contingent upon Andrew Luck coming back and only missing a game or two. And as long as that happens, because I don't think Houston's going to run away with anything. I just don't like their offense at all. I don't know about whether Tom Savage can be the guy. Nobody knows. You've got Will Fuller injured. Jalen Strong never does anything. Braxton Miller's banged up. The running game, Lamar Miller is just okay. Maybe this kid Foreman can do something, but he's a rookie. All right, we know they're going to have a great defense. No question. But the offense is an issue. And when I look at the Colts, I see the first 5 games of the season, 3 of their opponents are the Rams, the Browns, and the Niners. And as long as Luck comes back, even if they win that first game with Tolzien, which they could, it's the Rams, then Luck comes back. You got an easy schedule to start the season. And I love really what they did in the offseason with that defense. Finally, they bring in a GM that puts attention to that defense. And that defense, and then they also give Gore some help with Mack in the backfield. As long as Luck is back in a week or two, I think the Colts, I think people are writing them off too soon. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I mean, to me, we've seen the Andrew Luck show go off the rails over the last couple of seasons, and now his availability is in question. Pagano seems to be hiding what's truly going on, telling Andy Starr that he actually hasn't seen him throw, which, come on, who buys that? So, look, I'm not on that. Right now, they are the favorite in the division, or they were. They were at 9-4. Now they're at 9-2. A little bit better odds for you if you wanted to go on that. And they've been replaced as the favorite by Tennessee, who's 6-5. And that would be my choice, even though Mariota hasn't shown much this preseason. I see he gets into a rhythm, and that I like Decker for that offense. Corey Davis, I think he's going to be a nice find. They've obviously got a running game with the versatility that they have there. Defense is going to be fine. I don't think anybody in the division outside of Houston can hang their hat on defense, even though I like Indy's upgrades. But
what's
for the most part,
Houston's odds to win the division?
Yeah, I'm going with Tennessee.
No, I mean, what's Houston's odds to win the division?
Oh, Houston is they were 9-4. Now they are 11-5.
Oh wow! I didn't realize Tennessee would be so Tennessee's the favorite to win the division.
Yeah, Tennessee's my favorite.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought that. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl odds and they're different, so that's kind of weird. Houston's the 20-1 Super Bowl pick. Tennessee 33-1. Colts 50-1. But then again, I mean, winning the division is one thing. Winning a Super Bowl, you can understand why the Super Bowl odds would be different because people would, okay, if Houston is good, then they stand a chance maybe to win the Super Bowl, but there's no way Tennessee, even if they win that division, is winning a Super Bowl. So
yeah, these are all Westgate odds, and as far as win totals go, Indy's currently at 8, Houston's at 8.5, and Tennessee's at 9.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. And in the North, it's usually a 3-team battle. Is it Baltimore, Pittsburgh, or Cincinnati? And of course, Pittsburgh's the favorite now, and we understand why. Cincinnati had the drop off. Now you got all the Vontaze Burfict stuff going on. Joe Mixon could be a superstar, but can he stay out of trouble? And then you've got Baltimore, and Baltimore. Look, I'm. This is another team that I've talked a lot about over the last couple of years. Not going crazy about them, but liking them as a long shot or a sleeper, probably because I had them as a sleeper pick to win the Super Bowl when they won the Super Bowl. So maybe I've got a little bit of a thing there in my heart because I know this organization. I know the coaching staff. I know the quarterback. I know they can do it at times. And I also know that even including Pittsburgh, there's not many other teams in the AFC that can beat the Patriots in the postseason like the Ravens can. And so if they can just get to the postseason, and if they had to face the Patriots, even if it's in Foxborough, they just match up well with the Patriots. And that's something the Steelers don't do, as we saw last year. So I just think that it's a 3-team race. I know there's a Flacco thing going on too, but again, this is just based on him playing the whole season. I'm going to go with the Ravens. I like what's going on with some of the younger defenders. I'm starting to see some growth there. And then offensively, they bring in Macklin. That'll help them a little bit because they can't count on Perryman. I like the tight end depth now is better with Max Williams and Nick Boyle. I think the running game is going to be better. I think West is going to be okay. He's needed a few years to kind of get his bearings. So I think Baltimore is ready for an opportunity to battle Pittsburgh all the way down to the wire. And when you see a huge difference in odds, Pittsburgh 12-1, Baltimore 50-1 to win the Super Bowl, makes it even more easier for me to take Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on the Ravens bandwagon, and to me, the universe is showing you that they did something that they shouldn't have because they've been cursed for the last couple of years. Just injury-wise, they can't get out of their own way. Usually happens early too, which demoralizes everybody. Happened again this year. McClellan's the most recent guy to go down. I think they've lost 8-10 players that were projected to make the 53, and I don't know how you recover from that, especially with Flacco coming into and you know what? I think they are kind of conserving him, so it's not the same situation as an Andrew Luck. So I buy getting behind that part of this. But I mean, I just think that there's only so much that you can lose. I agree, Cincinnati's got a shot at taking a step back, but to me, this is the year that it all gels for Pittsburgh. I really like them in this position.
All right. Well, if that's the case, though, I've got to ask you, though, this, because we know as we move to the AFC East, all right, it's Patriots. The only question is, can the Dolphins get to the postseason? The Jets and the Bills are more than likely battle it out for top 5 pick in the draft. So sure. The question then with Pittsburgh is, because, again, as I said, Pittsburgh, we all knew. See, the world knew. It was national news knew that when Pittsburgh was ready to face the Patriots, they don't match up with them well. Their defensive scheme doesn't work against Brady. You look at the stats. He eats them alive. Now, I understand the injury situation. I get that. And yes, if the Steelers are going to beat the Patriots, even if their defense matches up poorly again, maybe the Steelers can outscore them in the postseason as long as Bryant and Bell and Brown are all healthy. I'll give you that. But that's a big if because we haven't seen it. They've only, started like 11 games together ever? So if that happens, okay, I'll give them a shot in a 42-41 game. But the thing I'm a little bit down on Pittsburgh is if you know that your defense can't match up with them, do something different. And when you don't do something different, that's a bad sign that your coaching staff doesn't have a clue.
I mean, but it is. There's such a thing as a bad matchup, and yeah, no question. I mean, there's no disputing any of that. It's just a matter of I can't pick the Ravens to come out of the division and challenge simply because they're a better matchup.
Oh, I get that. No, I get that. I
understand your thing, but it's similar to Deion Waiters, to take an NBA analogy, when he's like, oh, you guys are lucky we're not out there, and I'm writing this for the Players Tribune instead of being out there to challenge LeBron. To me, in a perfect world, the Ravens get there healthy. Sure, their coaching staff. That's what we're talking about here as the great equalizer is somebody that can take what the Patriots throw at you and find weaknesses in it.
Yeah.
To me, I think that the teams for that are going to be the Raiders and the Chiefs if we're going to avoid another Patriots Super Bowl appearance. But yeah, as far as this division goes, you got to get through the 17 weeks. And as we go in there and the Ravens are already limping in, I just can't get behind them.
All right. So then, well, first of all, let me ask you, do you think the Dolphins have a realistic chance to make the postseason?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think we saw the beginning of, whether it's Tannehill or Cutler, what this team is going to hang its hat on is that offensive line with a healthy Pouncey and a healthy Tunsil emerging, and that running game with J.J. So we saw it last year. We saw it, we got a glimpse of it. I'm not a big Tannehill fan at all. I mean, I feel bad for him. I feel bad that he couldn't make it through the season, but I think Jay Cutler will be just fine.
I agree.
And he's going to be solid. Probably they'll get after him when he blows a game with a couple of interceptions, but by and large, you could be the Jets and have Bryce Petty out there eventually.
Hey,
so
you could say Hackenberg. Don't say Petty now. You never know about Petty. But
Petty, give him 2 years. Give him 2 years.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah, maybe longer. Okay. But I agree with you.
I mean, I think they can make it. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you because, look, I know they've had some injuries already. McMillan's out for the year. That's and Misi's out for the year. So that I get that. But look, they brought in Lawrence Timmons anyway. He wasn't there last year. So they brought him in, and he's a veteran guy. But also, I think their pass rush. I mean, you take a look at that defensive line. Wake, Sue,
sure.
The kid Harris looks good. The kid Gaccio looks good from LSU. As far as the defensive lineman. Yeah, so that's good. And then you take, like you said, I think Cutler. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be better for this offensive quarterback than Tannehill, and he's going to be able to throw to Parker, Stills, Landry. He's got Ajayi if Ajayi stays healthy. I think this is one of those sleeper teams. Now, I don't know. Again, I'm not saying to win the division, of course. But if I'm looking at teams based on odds, and again, I'm just throwing in odds to win the Super Bowl just to show you that I'm trying to say a team that can get to the postseason and maybe win a game or two. I would say Dolphins at 66-1 would be one of those teams. And obviously, I think Baltimore at 50-1. And again, the Colts at 50-1. And I would throw in the Chargers at 66-1 as 4 long shot teams that have a chance to make the postseason and maybe surprise a little bit. How about you? Who would you be like your surprise teams in the AFC or team?
In the entire AFC?
In the entire AFC.
Yeah, I mean, by default, it would have to be Miami. I think I don't believe in Cincinnati in that vein. I think that to call Oakland or Kansas City a long shot would be a stretch. So, yeah, I mean, by default, it's got to be the Dolphins because I can see it. I can see a happier, more engaged Jay Cutler simply because he walked across the street to retirement, saw how the other side lives briefly, and said, let me get another $10 million and come back and be engaged and have a new environment with a guy that I have some familiarity with.
Yes.
I mean, he's got, at the very least, he's not going to be freezing
True.
for all of December. He'll just be freezing for half of it when he stops in New York and New England and whatnot. But I think he'll be very happy South Florida and happy Jay, happy Dolphins maybe.
Yeah, maybe he needed to be back down south where he all started his college career. A little bit further south, but that's okay. Yeah, maybe he'll actually smile on the sidelines. But yeah, I agree. I think Dolphins definitely are a team to keep an eye on. So, by the way, who did you pick in the South?
In the South, Tennessee.
Tennessee, okay. All right, so let's go to let me ask you the same thing about the NFC then. So my surprise teams in the NFC would be Philly, obviously, at 40-1, and New Orleans at 40-1. And I think we could probably put Arizona in there barely because they're 33-1, and that's a big enough number. So those would be the teams that I would throw a little future Super Bowl money on. And again, not necessarily to win the Super Bowl, but Eagles, Saints, and Arizona. And I think I know you like Arizona. That would be a team. You have another team in there besides Arizona?
Well, I mean, Arizona's it because it does seem like they're being faded pretty hard. 8.5, that's a trap line for the Cardinals based on what we've seen from them. win total wise. And you mentioned the odds. I don't have the Super Bowl odds in front of me, just the season wins and the division odds. But yeah, between them and Philadelphia in a really, they're a boomer bust type. Everything has to go right for them, from the defensive backs improving to Peters and Matthews being anchors all year and healthy, and then Carson Wentz really elevating his level of play, because it's there. You can tell that the guy has the potential to be special. It's just a matter of time. So will this be the year, or will he continue to be inconsistent, fail throws when he needs to, and he'll probably be a guy that gets picked off in the end zone once or twice too many. But if he can avoid those pitfalls, then yeah, they've got the goods.
Yeah, maybe that's also where LeGarrette Blount comes in. Give him the ball down in the end zone, and maybe you don't have to worry about throwing some of those passes. But understood.
Smallwood looks good too. They're going to utilize him, and obviously they got Sproles coming back. So they've got a lot of weapons. Zach Ertz, he's got great chemistry with Ertz.
Yeah.
And
their offensive line is good. It's not great, but it's good. So
so long as again Peters and Matthews stay healthy.
Yep.
Lane Johnson, I mean.
Yep. All right. So Patriots. Let's say something happens with the Patriots. So Tom Brady, he goes down. Who would be your team? Or let's just say who's in the AFC Championship game. That'll figure it out. Patriots against who?
Did you say if Brady goes down?
No. I'm just saying I might as well not say that. So let's just say just say, because I don't want to jinx them. So let's just say AFC Championship game. New England against
Oakland.
Okay, so New England and Oakland.
With Oakland having a shot.
All right. And then in the NFC, who you got in the championship game?
I will go Green Bay, and that's a tough one. Green Bay, and I guess it's going to be my NFC champ, because they're the most clear cut. Does Seattle get there again? Probably, we'll stick them in that game for now, but
sure.
Really a big TBD there.
Okay, so Green Bay. So you're going with the Super Bowl that probably everybody that's not necessarily a Packer or Patriot fan would still want to see is Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady.
I am, and I'll throw the asterisk that unlike you, and I've seen it, you do have some of these futures. I'm a firm believer that you go with the favorites. Alabama's my national champ. You go with the favorites simply because if you're asking me months in advance to project who's healthy and what happens, then you're asking me to say, in a perfect world, these are the teams. In my perfect world, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, these are teams Super Bowl.
Sure. Oh, I get that. I mean, for me, it was more of, it's sort of like playing the stock market with the futures. I mean, you can't take one team. You have to be able to take like 10 or 15 teams during the season at certain times when you're buying low. And you're saying, you know what, I think this is the right time to take them. The odds are good. And making sure that you hold on to enough money where you can at least hedge your bet late in the season if you need to. Because last year I did have Clemson. I took them at twice during the season. Once when they were 8-1 in the preseason, and then I got them at 6-1 at the end of November. So that wound up working out for me. Via your rationale,
I definitely like Arizona and Miami. And
okay.
You liking Baltimore right now is probably best because it is. I mean, I don't know how you can buy at a lower stock right now.
That's true.
With the uncertainty and the injury.
Yeah, if I was thinking of really Super Bowl, definitely out of the teams I was talking about, it's got to be Baltimore because of their DNA. If they could just stay healthy and all that, then they've done it before. Whereas in the NFC, I'd probably go with Super Bowl. I don't know. Arizona or Philly would be a tough call right there. Arizona's got more experience. That might give them the edge. So I'm right there with you with Arizona. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes to go. By the way, who do you think is going to get the top pick in the draft?
I think the Jets have set themselves up
thank
for
you.
it. And
Appreciate that.
Whatever Sam Darnold says about not coming out, I think is complete nonsense. So say what you want.
Well, what if they have it down here, though? What if they don't even go to the Rose Bowl? Don't you think he might have incentive, especially because Dan Shonka said yesterday on the show that he's kind of like I remember there's this other player. I think it might have been, I don't know if it was McCaffrey or another guy. Might have been Luck that stayed that extra year. And the reason that he was able to stay an extra year is because he was one of those guys that had a good education, came from a good family, didn't need the money. When you're in that situation like Darnold is, sometimes you're like, I don't really have to do this. Sure, I want to get there. So if I don't get to the Rose Bowl and I don't get a chance to win a championship, I want to come back another year. So I think that's the only way he even considers it.
I would assume it's luck that you're talking about, and that's a great point. But if things go poorly for USC, and poorly is probably not the right term because Washington is going to be great. But if they don't get to where they want to go by winning that Pac-12 championship game, I think that Sam Darnold will experience enough turmoil this year and be fed up with the BMOC tag enough to go be a grown up.
That's a good point. That's a nice way to look at it in that respect. I don't know, of course, who would it be, because I still have a hard time believing that if USC doesn't get in, that UCLA is going to, because I don't trust Jim Mora. Jim Mora is not Pete Carroll. I like what he's done recruiting wise at UCLA. Done a great job recruiting there, but he can't coach. Sorry, he just can't.
Washington.
Yeah, I mean, Washington definitely would be the team. They have Browning coming back. I know you've got him in your Final Four, returning once again. And you know what? I was surprised. I didn't see it lately. I know I checked up on it a couple of weeks ago, and I actually was surprised what their odds were. They were like 20-1 to win the championship. I was like, really? That kind of surprised me, considering they made the Final Four last year. Now, I know they lost a couple of key guys. They lose Ross. They lose, about 2 or 3, key guys from last year, but every team loses key guys. So you do like Washington in the Final Four?
I do. I mean, their schedule, really, the fact that they avoid USC until a potential championship game.
Yeah.
And get Oregon, who's, obviously fallen a little bit, but Willie Taggart will bring them back. They get UCLA, and they get Utah and Washington State at home. Sandwiched in the middle is that trip to Palo Alto, and obviously Stanford's going to be good. But, if you're playing your best ball at that, and I have total confidence in Peterson getting them there, considering the first 2 months are very light, then Washington's going to be a force to be reckoned with and be in that Pac-12 championship game. They win that, and they go lose in the national semis again.
All right, yeah. What about USC though? Because as you said, with Darnold, with USC beats Washington last year. I was absolutely frustrated and upset beyond belief that USC and Penn State, to me, I believe they both deserve to be in the postseason, in the playoff system, because they beat those teams, especially USC wins in Washington, and Penn State wins their division and the Big Ten championship. But we don't need to get into that. Fact is, when USC played Penn State in the Rose Bowl, I think everybody saw exactly how good those two teams were. And so, I'd love to see a USC Penn State rematch maybe in the postseason. And you know what? I think it may happen. But why did you go with Washington over USC?
Oh, I mean, I think once we get to a championship game point, I think
coaching?
Chris Peterson is the best coach. Yeah. Chris Peterson is the best coach in that company.
Yeah.
And then you give him time to prepare. Jake Browning obviously knows the offense by the back of their hand. If they were healthy going into that game, I would take the move.
All right, and another team that you have going in that's a little bit of a, it's not a top pick, but some people might take Louisville, but they
very few,
but not a lot, but some might, and you're one of them. But look, Lamar Jackson. I said this on yesterday's show. Another thing I hate about college football, I hate the Heisman. I think it's ridiculous. It's about stats now. It's not about who leads his team to wins and championships. And when he had a chance to win big games, he didn't. And then I understand the distractions of the Heisman, but he looked awful against LSU's defense. And to me, when you play defenses that like that every week or every other week, that's what's going to happen to you anyway. Instead of playing the crappy teams he played all year. But let's get by that. Fact is, they do have Petrino and they do have Jackson back. So what is it about the supporting cast, though, and maybe even about the schedule, considering they're in the same division as Florida State and Clemson, but especially Florida State because everybody likes the Noles?
Yeah, I mean, and I would like the Noles here, too. The game is in Tallahassee. I like the way Louisville's schedule sets up early. So, for instance, here's not to be a Lamar Jackson apologist, but I'll go ahead and be one. He got out to such a significant lead.
Oh yeah.
That he really and nobody really bridged that gap till the very end, and that's fine. To me, it was a landslide. So I saw that. I also think that facing LSU when half your team is engaged and the other half isn't didn't bode well.
Those
for
are
him
the
at
bowls for you. That's why I can't stand the bowls
doubt.
either. The bowls, you never know. I mean, as a handicapper, that must drive you absolutely insane.
Yeah, bowl season's a different animal, and honestly, I've had like a 70% bowl season, which has got to be a top 3 accomplishment.
That's very good.
And I've had garbage, because it really does become who goes into the to the game with the right frame of mind. You can go into the week with the right frame of mind and say everything you want, but then you get swept up in the swag and all the pre-game festivities and all of that, and sometimes you're not mentally engaged to play. And then there's obviously huge comebacks in all of those games because teams let off the gas a lot easier than they do when there's actually something on the line, except for a mythical trophy. But I digress. As far as your question, the Cardinals really come back with a strong back four. They've got to be better than they were last year at that end. They lose John Harvey Clemens, but that's pretty much it. And so I think we look at a defense that's going to be better. And again, they basically have to win one game. I think they get Clemson at the right time, week 3. I don't think the Tigers are going to be as engaged as they should for a road game.
Revenge.
So win the FSU game, and obviously you got to win the championship to get that.
Yeah, and they don't have to play anybody non-conference. They play Kentucky, Purdue, and North Carolina. And not saying Kentucky on the road or North Carolina on the road are not easy, but they're not top 10 teams that some of these teams have. Like Florida State's got to play next, against Alabama. So that's a big difference when we're not talking about necessarily the division, of course, but we are talking about the championship and being in the postseason. And as we saw with Ohio State and Penn State, or especially USC and Washington, the difference between Washington getting in and USC was because USC lost to Alabama earlier in the season and had that extra loss. And that's why Washington got in. So if that happens to Florida State, they lose to Alabama, Louisville, they could actually even lose that game to Florida State. Maybe they could still make the postseason as long as they don't lose another game.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I think fast forward to November, early December, and you've got Louisville probably winning games against Virginia, Syracuse, and Kentucky by a combined 100, 120 points, and other teams knocking each other off and suffering attrition throughout the way. They don't have a big mountain to climb to get into that top 4 if they've shown well against FSU, potentially won that game. And obviously, we'll know this month if this is even a realistic scenario because they got it.
All right, and the other 2 teams are no stranger to the postseason, and that's Alabama and Ohio State. So Alabama, it's just about reloading and just the confidence that they're going to reload, and why not? I mean, they always do, and they do have a quarterback that almost won the national championship as a freshman, and that goes a long way. And they got Scarborough, and they got Ridley. So they've got the quarterback, the running back, the receiver, and they've got Saban, and they've got all that defensive talent that we know will be the next wave of great players. So I hear you. And then Ohio State, that one a little bit more okay, I understand it, but I'm not sold on JT Barrett winning big games, and they're going to have to be better than last year. I know they were young, so maybe that'll pay off for them because it's going to have to. That's it. To me, I think the only difference is Ohio State, have they learned from last year being a younger team? If so, now that they're older, was that the difference, or did they just not have enough talent? Because they got hammered by Clemson, and they did lose to Penn State. They lost a couple, and they might have and maybe should have lost to Michigan. So they're gonna have to grow up.
They have enough talent. There's no question about that. You look at all the guys across their starting 2 deep, and they're all elite prospects.
Oh yeah.
Last year, Michael Jordan comes to mind. Top 3 offensive lineman, future NFL guy that was an absolute turnstile in late in the season. And so I read to prepare for Ohio State, Indiana, which goes off. And I'm not going to give many picks away on the show, but Ohio State's going to destroy Indiana. And you look at the fact that it's a team with a chip on its shoulder with new coordinators. Kevin Wilson is now running the offense. They're not going to be as conservative. If the offensive line gives JT Barrett time to shine, Plus, they got that freshman kid that's going to be special and come in situations. Tate Martell, I think is his name. I mean, it's a team with too many pieces.
By the way, I think that I mean the main thing for me, if I was going to agree with you on Ohio State clubbing Indiana tonight, would be the time to prepare. And you give Urban Meyer months to prepare for a team like Indiana, which isn't like a great team anyway, and he should blow them out. The only thing is those two teams have usually played a lot of close games recently over the last few years, as you know, and it is the first game of the season, which anything can happen. I guess the other question is though, why are they playing? I mean, I've never seen this before. Two division opponents playing in the first game of the season.
They asked Urban Meyer that, and why are you playing Indiana? He said because they told us to. So
they told
I
him
don't think
to.
he knows either.
Okay, all right. And is Rutgers going to get blown out too? My Rutgers against Washington tomorrow.
What do you think?
Yeah, I know. They're going to be better though because they can't be any worse. I have faith in Chris.
Well, I mean, it depends on their quarterbacks. They believe in them.
Hey, I like Bolin. Bolin's a lot better than what they've had there the last few years.
That's true.
So,
not since Tom Savage have you been able to sleep well at night, right?
Oh, Tom Savage, yeah. They got rid of Tom Savage because Greg Schiano's worst decision as a coach at Rutgers was making the decision to turn to a spread offense. When he did that, Savage was no good for the offense. They let him go. If he would have just stuck with the pro style, Savage would have stayed there. They would have been a lot better for it. And that's just my little Rutgers insight for the day.
And your boy Schiano at Ohio State.
He is at Ohio State.
They've got a lot to prepare with.
Maybe he will be. I wonder if he'll stick around long enough to be their next head coach at Ohio State. That's possible.
Yeah.
You never know. Okay, and then is there a sleeper? I guess Louisville's a sleeper because I think their odds are probably somewhere around. I would think at least 25 to 1 or more. I would think.
Yeah, I'm gonna say they're 50, and I don't have them in front of me.
Could be.
But yeah, sure. they're up there.
Okay.
So
that's your sleeper, and I'm gonna go ahead and put out my college futures report in the next day or two before Saturday. So I'll savor my information for the content that we're gonna provide here on Ourlads over at ourlads.com. Okay, so there you go. In the books, we were able to get everything in, and again, every week. We don't have a set time every week, but it's always going to be Thursday afternoon, early afternoon, at right around this time. And we'll tweet it out at Prime SN, or you can go to the schedule page on Prime Sports Network or any of our shows that we air earlier in the week, and we'll let you know as soon as we know. Usually we won't know until Wednesday, maybe as early as Thursday mornings, of course, as late as Thursday mornings. And I look forward to talking to you every week. Starting next week, we'll break down key games, starting with Week 1 games every Thursday, Tony. So I'm looking forward to it. This was great. Thanks for coming back, and look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right, much appreciated. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it, bro.
All right, Tony. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right, that's Tony Mejia. And once again, wrong dial. Once again, I've got so many dials in front of me now. I have to produce the show all by my lonesome. Anyway, next up. And by the way, I did not talk up the Baltimore Ravens because my next guest, who covers the Baltimore Ravens, is on the show. Matthew Stevens, who's a managing editor for BaltimoreBeatdown.com. But he'll be with us in just a minute. By the way, tomorrow, as I said at the open, we are going to have 2 shows tomorrow. 2 o'clock, we're talking fantasy football with Ourlads.com chief fantasy analyst Jamal Murphy. You might have heard Jamal on one of our other PSN shows. Jamal does some shows for us. He's done some basketball, and most recently he's been helping console me and Jan Levine as 3 consolable Jet fans on our Jet show, Jets Confidential Radio, which will air every Monday throughout the season. So just keep that in mind. That'll be on primesportsnetwork.com. So that's something that Jamal does, and he's into fantasy. And matter of fact, I just drafted in a fantasy league with Jamal for the first time a couple days ago. And we also have a guest that'll be with us. That's another fantasy expert that's been around in the fantasy industry for a long time, and is sports industry for a long time, just like Jamal has. And so when we talk fantasy at 2 o'clock tomorrow, one of the things that we'll really talk about is our draft. We'll go over our draft. It was a 10-team draft, and I had the second pick, and we'll talk about who we drafted and why and all that kind of stuff. So, and much more. So that's tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern. That's the first show. Then at 3:15 tomorrow, we'll have Jeff Hartman on. He's with BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, covering the Steelers, and Ken Marangolo, who you know from the Nationals baseball show at Nat Scraps every Tuesday night, or at least most Tuesday nights, because we've taken the last 2 weeks off because of football season. But as I've said before, if you're a Washington National baseball fan, you're going to be having shows every day during the postseason. And we certainly hope that's for weeks and not just a week like it's been like for the Nationals the last couple of years. So Ken Marangolo, managing editor from hogshaven.com, will also be on the show tomorrow at 3:15. So back-to-back shows, very little break for me. That starts at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, so let's talk some Baltimore Ravens football now. And now, again, I don't know if he heard the show earlier. Maybe he didn't. But as I welcome in Matthew Stevens, the managing editor for BaltimoreBeatdown.com, I must let him know that I did pick Baltimore to win the AFC North, Matthew.
That is good to hear.
Did I make a mistake?
They're the one team that'll do it.
Did I make a mistake?
What was that?
Did I make a mistake?
Yeah. I'm with Ravens Wire, but I do believe that Baltimore is going to go ahead and take the AFC North this year.
Okay, so I know you're a little bit biased, but I'm not, and I did. So look, it's all about Flacco. So if Flacco's somehow not healthy, then all bets are off, and we've got to preface that, and that's just logic. But so let me ask you about Flacco then. Do you think everything? It's just people are taking too much into this. They're just being cautious, and as long as there's no crazy setbacks, he should be fine. Or is there something else going on?
Well, I mean, it's one of those types of things where they initially had said the first day of training camp when players reported, it's a little bit of soreness. It was just when he was working out. That's all it is. I mean, it happens. We're going to go ahead and give him a week of rest, and he'll be tip top. A week went by, and then we didn't see him. 2 weeks went by, then we didn't see him. Then all of a sudden, like, he's not at preseason games, he's still not practicing, and Coach John Harbaugh then starts kind of maybe dodging questions a little bit and being a little bit more vague. It got concerning the first preseason game, the second preseason game. At this point now, it appears that there is some time frame that he's going to return to practice. We don't know exactly what that is. Harbaugh had indicated that he's really just kind of waiting on the medical staff to just do a final clearance. But really, I mean, nobody actually knows what the injury really is. It cannot be muscle soreness. I mean, a high-level athlete like this doesn't lift weights and then 6 weeks later is still too sore to go ahead and practice.
Sure.
There's got to be something more. And that's concerning, especially if you're a quarterback with a maybe not great-looking offensive line in a division that enjoys getting after the quarterback. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely concerning.
Well, talk about that offensive line because, all right, let's just say Flacco's okay, and let's say he starts 14 games 100% healthy. That could be enough, maybe. We'll get back to that, but let's talk about the offensive line because there's a lot of changes going on there. Now, there's still a couple of guys that are considered top-level guys. Of course, Marshall Yanda, and then you have last year's top pick, Ronnie Stanley. So go ahead and tell me what else is going on. And now they brought in Zuda, and Howard. So tell me how they're shuffling this line and what's the starting five looking like?
Well, at this point, I mean, your starting five are Stanley on the left tackle. You have last year's right tackle James Hurst playing left guard, which is never a positive. You have at center, you have Ryan Jensen, not Jeremy Zuta, actually looking like that's going to be the starting center.
Is that okay?
Despite the Ravens signing him back.
Is that okay, though? Is he playing well from what you know?
He is. He's playing phenomenally well.
Okay. That's good.
I mean, for a young center, that's exactly what you want to see.
Okay.
Is he's showing that he's able to beat Zuta out, which is great.
Okay.
At right tackle, obviously, you have Yanda, so that's not a question mark. And then at right tackle, you have Howard. So, overall, if everyone's healthy, and that would be the big caveat right now, is if everyone's healthy, that's actually not a bad lineup. The problem being is that so far, 2 offensive linemen, both of them guards, are out for the season with knee injuries. You had a backup center or a guy who was going to compete for the starting center job in John Urschel. He retired day 1 of training camp. So at this point, the starting 5 look pretty good. But Ronnie Stanley's still out. You have James Hurst, who is a little questionable. He used to be a right tackle. You put him at left guard because he's not that great at right tackle, to be honest. But if he goes down, I mean, you're looking at a lot of trouble if there are any injuries along this offensive line. And considering that Baltimore has put 58 players on injured reserve over the last 3 seasons, not even counting this one, it's pretty likely that someone's going to get dinged up during the season, and you're going to have to substitute someone with very little experience and probably not the greatest ability in there.
Well, maybe you'll get lucky, like the Steelers may have. We don't know. With a guy like Joe, because there are going to be a lot of cuts that are coming down in the next 24, 48 hours that some are going to surprise us, and especially if anybody's cut on the offensive line, we know how golden that position is. If anybody does get cut that seems like they have any sort of value, then even if they're just a fringe backup starter, those are the types of guys that would make sense in Baltimore.
Absolutely, and that's something that's I think the coaching staff is going to be paying a lot of attention to, is if there's anybody, especially at guard, who is that, like you said, fringe starter, backup type of guy. I'm sure they'll be in the running to kind of lock someone in there just to have, more depth and more experience there in case something does happen.
So the 2 young guys, the draft picks, just too green. No way if they did get in there, that'd be a bad thing.
Well, one of them is Nico Siragusa, who is one of the ones who tore apart his knee and is out for the season. The other one is, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Jermaine Eluminor.
Okay.
And he has been rather mediocre, to be honest, especially when it comes to pass blocking. He's been pushed into the backfield pretty frequently. So at this point, I think just a little too green to actually put him out there and expect anything positive. Yeah,
well, I mean, he just started playing football in high school, so
Absolutely.
A few years later, you're in the pros. You're going to need some time. All right, so what about Jeremy Maclin? And because to me, see, this is when I look at the Ravens, I go, yeah, okay. Because, look, any team with an NFL injury issue at quarterback, especially when you've got a guy like who's won a Super Bowl, Flacco, that's going to it's going to dictate whether you have a playoff season or not. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. So we know the main issue is offensive line and can they stay healthy. But hey, you know what? If they do, great. But where I think that I like the Ravens on offense more this year than I have seen last year is can Jeremy Maclin be that number 2 guy next to Mike Wallace that they desperately need? Because I don't think that I don't know. You're the Ravens fan, but I can't imagine that you've been feeling good about counting on Brashard Perryman yet. And then you've got Tommy West, and I'm starting to kind of getting a feeling, I don't know, you tell me, that maybe West has finally reached the point. He's so talented. He's had some issues. He's on another team, and it's taken a little time to get used to everything. And maybe he's finally there, and he can actually have a decent season. Doesn't have to have a 1,500-yard season, but just give the Ravens something. If Justin Forsett can from a couple of years ago, why can't Tommy West? So if Tommy West can do that, that would be huge for Flacco.
Yeah, Terrence West has done. It all comes back down to that offensive line at running back.
Yeah.
He's struggled a little bit, and undoubtedly he'll split carries with either Danny Woodhead as a third down back, or either Javorius Allen or probably Taquan Mizell, 2 young backs that will probably end up splitting a little bit of carries with West. But at wide receiver, you're completely right. Brashard Perryman is, for the third off-season or third preseason in a row, is injured. This year it's a hamstring, and he's missed pretty much the entire preseason and a good portion of training camp. So we saw a lot of really good things out of him in OTAs, but if you can't get on the field, there's not much that you're going to be able to do for this team. Jeremy Maclin, I think, is probably going to be the team's number 1 guy, actually, come the regular season.
Okay.
Coach John Harbaugh had mentioned that they plan on kind of using him almost as like a first down machine. He's going to get a ton of targets. He's going to get a ton of receptions in that slot area, using his quickness and his shiftiness to kind of get open quickly in an effort to hopefully have Flacco hit him quickly and make plays after the catch. So.
And then Wallace is the more of the deep threat at times, especially with no Perryman.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think if you have the three of them on the field at the same time, Perryman, Wallace, and Jeremy Maclin, I think realistically you have Maclin in the slot. He's going to be a quick guy. You have Mike Wallace is going to be your downfield threat, and then Brashad Perryman's probably going to be your big body guy, maybe on the outside, maybe a little bit on the inside as well, and kind of toss him into the middle of the field probably more than anything else.
How about Chris Moore?
Chris Moore is not a lock to make this team by any stretch.
Okay.
Behind those three wide receivers, not a single wide receiver on this roster has made a case to actually get a roster spot.
Okay.
So, Baltimore could decide to keep Moore simply since they had him last year and they liked what he did. There's also another wide receiver, Quincy Adebayo.
Yep.
And he's done phenomenal in practice. Again, hasn't really put it together when it comes to games, but another one of those guys that, if he does, he was dominating in practice against a pretty good defense that Baltimore has. So, when it comes down to cuts, I'm not entirely sure who's going to be kept behind those three.
But another position, though, that we could definitely see the Ravens picking up a receiver in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some trade rumors out there from other teams, and I could certainly see, especially if the coaching staff and general manager Ozzie Newsome isn't entirely impressed with Perryman or feel like he's not going to come back quickly, that absolutely makes sense to grab someone to kind of fill that, that possession receiver role.
Yeah, it's important. Because look, I mean, they're with Flacco at his age, we know what they want to do. This is a team that wants to win the Super Bowl. And so if you're going to trade away, I mean, look at the Patriots. They made like 1 million trades in the offseason because they're trying to win as many Super Bowls as they can in the next couple of years before Tom Brady, has to be wheeled off in a wheelchair. So you would think Baltimore got to be feeling that way. Hey, if we got to give up a 3rd round pick or a 5th round pick or something like to bring in another receiver to give Flacco what he needs so we can try to win a championship here, yeah, you would think that they would do that. And by the way, with the Perryman pick, it just goes to show you, even the best general managers don't always hit it in the draft. And I'm not talking about Perryman's injuries. I'm talking about the fact that I think everybody was surprised when Newsome drafted Perryman where he did. It seemed like it was at least a full round reach. Those are bad ones, but hey, he's been doing it long enough. You're going to get, and especially with injuries, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, to not knock, I mean, obviously in Baltimore, Ozzie Newsome is everything for this town when it comes to the Ravens, but not to knock him at all, but I mean, he has not had very good luck when it comes to drafting wide receivers. I mean, when your top guy all time from a draft pick perspective is Torrey Smith, who obviously is no longer on the team and subsequently was kind of booted from San Francisco for not being able to produce, that's probably not a good highlight reel there, sadly. But yeah, it's, so they've done very well in terms of bringing in other wide receivers and those guys putting up yardage. I mean, we saw it with Steve Smith and we've seen it with other guys before. So certainly I think if the right guy is out there for the right price, I don't think it would be terrible for them to, like you mentioned, drop a 4th, drop a 5th, get someone in here to help you try to win a Super Bowl now.
Yeah, so because the reason I was coming a little bit surprised that you said about Maclin being potentially the number 1 guy, because we know he doesn't have the talent, because he does. It's just that you always start to wonder about a guy that's like on his 3rd team in 3 years. It's like, what's going on? Does because we can kind of explain it by going, first of all, we can say, okay, yeah, but look at what Philly had a quarterback. All right, Alex Smith, it's not what he does. But is it that, or is there something there? Like, what's happened to Jerry? Because a couple of years ago, Jeremy Maclin, everybody thought was ready to take the next step to being a really good receiver in this league. So what you're saying, though, is that everything looks okay.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a ton of him in practice.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the Ravens have been, especially with the injury bug biting them this year, have been kind of very hands-off and keeping guys on the sidelines, which makes sense. But yeah, I mean, in 2014 and 2015 combined, Maclin had nearly 2,500 receiving yards and 18 touchdowns. That's the guy that they think they can get back. And in Kansas City last year, I mean, it was a mixture of injuries, and it's a mixture of Kansas City had 3-4 other guys ready to go that were healthy and stepping up from a receiver standpoint. And Macklin costing what he was, it was a good decision to go ahead and let him go. It's then obviously a good decision for Baltimore to have picked him up. And I think it's going to be a Steve Smith-esque type of thing where you bring in a guy who has a lot of questions around him, and then suddenly he puts up a grand in yards, and people root for it as a good decision all of a sudden. So
all right.
I could be wrong. He could play one game and be hurt this year as well. But
yeah, you can't predict those.
You never know.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, you got to think though. I mean, I do that. Danny Woodhead is probably going to make 70 catches this year because look, Juszczyk's gone, and I don't know how many catches he had last year, like 50 or something. And they don't have that guy now, and we know how much Flacco just loves dumping the ball off. So, and even though the tight ends look a lot better now this year, I mean, you got Boyle and Max Williams, if he's healthy, boy, he looked good in that Miami game on that one play, which was, of course, a surprise to everybody that he could actually move like that after being banged up. But that's what he did in college. So there is that. See, that's the other thing of why I have faith that maybe they could do something better than last year because, okay, if Macklin works out and these tight ends work out, and then you have Danny Woodhead, these are weapons that Flacco just has not had the last couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to, and you hit it right on the head, Flacco and this offense really go through the run game and through the running backs, especially when it comes through the air. I mean, we saw it with Ray Rice when he was in town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a big reason why they went to the Super Bowl and won it. Is because you had a quick outlet valve that you could give the ball to, was usually pretty open, and you could count on making big chunks of yards after that. So it became something that the defense had to kind of account for. And in Woodhead, I mean, Flacco even came out and said it. He said Woodhead is the best receiving back he's ever seen since Ray Rice.
Okay.
And if that's an indication of how things are going to go from an offensive scheme standpoint, then that's a huge bonus for a guy like Flacco. And then from a fantasy perspective, for a guy like Woodhead, who will like I said, he's probably going to be the third down back. And I mean, the Ravens threw to their backs over 100 times last year. So, I mean, 70 receptions for Woodhead does not seem out of the possibility.
No. And of course, look, last year when even though they had Melvin Gordon in San Diego, they in that first game and early on, it was still Woodhead though that looked like he was like getting more reps. So I would not be surprised that Woodhead gets a ton of reps. Now we don't know how it's going to happen, but he's going to be on that field a lot, and he's going to be a big part of that offense. You get best guess. Does Max Williams or Nick Boyle do especially Williams because of his talent? Will he be a factor? Will either guy be a factor?
That's one of those positions they're still trying to figure out right now. I mean, they've got Benjamin Wallace in there, and on the official depth chart, they've got Nick Boyle as their top guy at tight end, but they've primarily used him this season as a blocker.
Okay.
So I think it's really between Max Williams and Benjamin Watson as your two real pass catchers. So I'm not entirely sure how either one will do. I mean, obviously Watson has the experience and the production over the years to warrant a certain amount of respect there. But Williams, when he's on fire, and we saw it against Miami, when he's on fire, the guy is really hard to bring down. The issue is just getting him open.
Yeah, and
he's
being healthy.
Done a great job at that.
Yeah. Okay. We got about 5 minutes to go. So defensively, and another reason why I like the Ravens this year is I think that they're going to be better defensively. I like what I've seen so far in the preseason from some of these younger guys that are looking like they're starting to grow up. Really like what I've seen out of Brent Urban. You tell me how some of the young guys have been, for the rookies, Marlon Humphrey, Tyrus Bauer, Chris Wormley, and Tim Williams. But I think that they're going to get a little bit more pressure this year. And by the way, also Zadarius Smith has made some plays, and it's about time. So if he can translate that to the regular season, that'd be huge. So am I wrong?
No, I mean, you're completely right. And this team has done a great job over the years of really stacking their defense. I mean, the defensive line was kind of last year's big project. They added in guys like, Willie Henry and Michael Pierce. And the year before that, they added in Carl Davis. So they put a lot of draft equity into and time and money and development into that defensive line. You're seeing it pay off now. I mean, that defensive line is, stacked with talent. So much so that I'm not entirely sure that, there's going to be a guy that's undoubtedly let go that is starter quality on half the teams in the league. That's the type of talent they've got there. In terms of their linebackers, they let Elvis Dumerville go in the offseason, and at this point, I think they're still trying to figure out who their pass rushers are going to be and how to use them. And that's where they spent the draft equity this offseason is really trying to build up, Terrell Suggs' heir eventually, and a guy opposite him and a little bit of depth there. So hopefully in a year or two, those guys, like you mentioned, kind of grow up a little bit more, kind of, they find their niche and they're able to, execute on a regular basis.
Is there anyone, by the way, before you get to secondary, is any one of those young players that you like the most, either rookie, first or second year players that have looked better this offseason?
Matthew Judon has been a guy that they haven't penciled in as the opposite rush linebacker to Terrell Suggs.
Okay.
But he's looked phenomenal as a pass rusher. He's a guy that's going to come in there hot and make some plays. Behind him, Tyus Bowser has been a rookie this year, who has done exceptionally well more as kind of a coverage linebacker and stopping the run. It's always nice to see, especially a rookie, make an open field tackle. That's one of the harder things you can do in this league, especially in your first few games ever playing. Bowser has absolutely had no issues. Textbook tackle every single time. Those are the two guys, and they're the strong side linebackers. Those are the two that keep an eye out for this season to continuously keep making plays as the season goes on.
Yeah, and of course, Judon was a Division II player who actually won the Gene Upshaw Award, which is the best defensive or offensive lineman for Division II football a couple years ago at Grand Valley State. He had 34 career sacks, so he knows what he's doing. He just needed maybe a year, and that's what happens. Sometimes you need a year or two, and then the light comes on, and that would be a huge addition for them.
Yeah, and the Ravens are doing a great thing defensively. They're letting, again, that defensive line handle things up front, and then essentially just letting Judon pin his ears back and go at the quarterback, which is what you want for a young kid like that. It's not fill his head with a bunch of different things and make him play 3 downs.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's have him play 2 downs, and we'll have him just go ahead and eye up the quarterback.
Yep, attack. Okay, go to that secondary now, because they did add Marlon Humphrey in the first round and Tony Jefferson in free agency and Brandon Carr. They had Eric Weddle from a couple years ago. So what's the new secondary look like?
The secondary, it was always pretty solid. The biggest issue has been, again, over the last few years, injuries. And that's why, even though Tony Jefferson is the better player out of the two, I think that the addition of Brandon Carr was the best move for this team, at least defensively this offseason. Not a great cornerback, but the guy's healthy, and you can rely on him.
Okay.
And he's experienced. And that is monumental for this team, especially since they've been able to get after the quarterback and stop the run. Carr isn't being expected to be a shutdown corner. He's just essentially expected just to go out there and allow Marlon Humphrey, who's been injured for the past few weeks, to kind of sit on the bench, learn a little bit. You're in no rush to start. Let's not freak you out. So it's really just been getting guys healthy and getting things there. The addition of Jefferson to the secondary as a strong safety has allowed Eric Weddle to kind of focus on just sitting in the middle of the field, pulling his best Ed Reed impression, and kind of just go after the ball and make plays, which has worked out so far. So all in all, the secondary, they're not getting passed on a ton, but when they are, they've done a great job of being able to bat balls away. And then you have the undrafted rookie Jalen Hill, who has been the training camp star and preseason star for this team. Guy has been one of Pro Football Focus's best cornerbacks of the preseason. And he was a walk-on at, I believe, Jacksonville State.
Wow.
Jacksonville. And now he's come on here as an undrafted rookie. The Ravens were the only team to offer him a contract, period. And he's blowing everybody away. And at this point, it looks like he might take the slot role away from Brandon Boykin, which is a pretty impressive thing.
Yeah, that's a good story. By the way, do the Ravens, speaking of fantasy, do they have enough in the return game as well that with this defense, it looks like it could be a good one, that they could actually be a pretty good fantasy defense?
From a fantasy perspective, I think it's tough because I don't think they're going to get a ton of turnovers. I don't think they're going to get a ton of sacks. I think they're just going to be productive and 3 and outs. I think that's just what you're going to see. So from a scoring point,
probably
they're not going to get scored on a lot, but I don't think they're going to make big plays in an effort to give you points.
Okay.
From the returns standpoint, I mean, if you're looking at that, I don't really see anybody there that has done exceptionally well. I mean, you're probably looking at Michael Campanaro at this point as your return specialist, and he is not impressed throughout preseason. So I still think you take him relatively high, but there's other teams that are going to go ahead and make big splash plays that'll earn you more points, I think.
All right. By the way, Matthew, you because I know you've been pretty busy the last few months making the waves. So the right URL then, the right web address, would it be BaltimoreWire.com?
No, it is ravenswire.usatoday.com.
Oh, that's completely off. I mean, wow. So it has nothing to do with. Oh, so the Baltimore beat-out thing is gone. So go ahead and give it one more time.
It is ravenswire.usatoday.com, or you can find us on Twitter at the Ravenswire, or on Facebook at, again, Ravenswire. So any of those spots is where you can go ahead and find us, and then you can find me specifically at MatthewS_NFL on Twitter.
All right, excellent. Matthew, I look forward to talking to you during the season, and hopefully when we do talk again during the season, we'll both be feeling good about our conversation since we're both picking them to win the division. Even me more so. Absolutely. Since I'm not a Ravens fan.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I'm right this year.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you very much.
All right, so there you go. That's our Baltimore preview for the season. By the way, we have a whole bunch of previews, team previews, up at ourlads.com under the blog section. I think we got through, might have been through half of the teams. Probably would have been able to get through all of them, but excuse me for not working 22 hours a day. All right, so thanks to Matthew for that Baltimore insight. And tomorrow on the show, as I've said before, we've got 2 shows. We've got the Fantasy Show at 2 with Jamal Murphy. And at 3:15, we have 2 guests, Jeff Hartman from Behind the Steel, and I do know these websites are factual. Jeff Hartman from editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and Kim Arangolo, managing editor of HogsHaven.com. So we'll talk some Pittsburgh and Washington football tomorrow at 3:15. Now, I did not know, as I said earlier on this show, I picked Washington 4th. And I was thinking that maybe they could win the division a month ago. Because, as I said, I still think they can win the division. It's just that I don't like what I've seen in the preseason, and so I'm gonna and here Ken and I have had a lot of nice conversations over the last couple of years. We're simpatico on the Nats for most of the time, so we might have a nice conversation on because I would think that Ken's going to be pretty excited about the season. I see no reason why you wouldn't. As I said, they're an improved team on defense. At least it appears that way. And you do have Kirk Cousins, and this is a quarterback league, so. I can imagine that there's going to be some excitement there with Ken. For me, I'm not seeing it. But hey, anything can happen in that division. And then for Pittsburgh, look, I get it. I'm not trying to think that I'm not making some not crazy, but a little bit of a long shot / sleeper pick by taking Baltimore over Pittsburgh. By the way, Baltimore and Cincinnati are both 50-1 evenly. So they're kind of even as that second choice behind Pittsburgh. But it's just that there's just a big gap, of course, and I just don't think that gap is that big. I just don't. I don't think that Pittsburgh is going to win the division by 3 or 4 games. I think if Pittsburgh wins the division, and by the way, Baltimore is going to be better than they were last year. I think considerably better. And I think the talent is there on paper for that to be the truth. That's not like me just going, I just think they're going to be better. The talent's better. It's there. Pittsburgh's talent, okay, they're healthier, at least. They should be, right? Bryant isn't suspended, so that's good. And, okay, they've got some better players on defense as well. That is huge. What we just talked about a little while ago. If you're going to face the Patriots in the postseason, you better be. If you're going to have a realistic chance. And they did also add Vance McDonald, which maybe a change of scenery does him well, and maybe having Ben Roethlisberger throw the one will do him well, but hasn't really achieved what the Niners had hoped he would have achieved. So it's not a surprise that the Niners got rid of McDonald and at least got a draft pick for him. And it just shows you that Pittsburgh, which was a smart move to upgrade from Jesse James, because that's not, Jesse James ain't no starting tight end in the NFL. So, but I don't think to me, there's no doubt that Baltimore is a better team. They made more improvements in the offseason than Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. By using that analysis and then just take a look at what happened last year, okay, when they played in that last game for Baltimore, that knocking Baltimore out, and look how close Baltimore came. So, and that was just a team that just wasn't. I don't think there's any way that team was 8-8 last year, Baltimore, and Baltimore's better than that this year. So I definitely think Baltimore is a 10-win team. I do. Now Pittsburgh might be an 11-win team, maybe even a 12-win team. It's possible. But I think it's going to be a lot closer. That's my point. Is I just think that's going to be a lot closer. And I understand Pittsburgh being the favorite. No dummy there. They should be. I just don't think they should be a favorite that much. So we'll see. And I'm not going to keep harping on injuries, but that's the thing that's just commonplace. Injuries, you have to. Nobody knows. Nobody knows how many games Luck is going to play. Nobody knows how many games Flacco is going to play. Nobody knows. Okay, so I want to thank Tony Mejia for joining me. And again, Tony will be with me every week, every Thursday, to preview the NFL week. So next week, week 1, next Thursday, we'll have our time set, usually Wednesday night, no later than Thursday morning, and we'll tweet it out, and then I'll have it available at Prime Sports Network's homepage. So you can see it there as far as the schedule, but we'll tweet it out. So just follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. We'll always let you know a whole bunch of things. Sometimes we throw commentary in there and analysis, but for the most part, you can tweet us and follow us, I should say, so you can follow what we do when it comes to our scheduling and when the shows are available on demand, who's going to be on, what we're going to talk about, all that kind of stuff. So thanks to Tony Mejia, who again he did say that he was not going to make a prediction. Well, he wasn't going to be giving his picks every week, but he did give his pick. So, in a way, he did say that Ohio State was going to blow out Indiana tonight. So, we'll see. Also, again, thanks to our Baltimore guest, Matthew Stevens from ravenswire.usa.com. Is that it? You heard it. For Matthew, for Tony, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, 2 o'clock with our fantasy coverage first, and then 3:15 after that.
Thanks for tuning in to this PrimeSportsNetwork.com production. Additional PSN programs are available on demand and conveniently located on our website, as well as our official YouTube and iTunes pages under Prime Sports Network. You can also check us out on Twitter at PrimeSN. Once again, thanks for listening to Ourlads Football Radio Network.